Now, after the Sabbath, toward the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. And for fear of him, the guards trembled and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He is risen, as he said. Come, see the place where he lay." Welcome to this week's message. My name is Henry Loke. This is God's Feeding Station. It is Resurrection Weekend, the culmination of Holy Week or Passover weekend. And today's message is inspired by Charles Spurgeon that he gave on the tomb of Jesus. And I'm going to invite you, as he did today, to come with me and visit the tomb of Jesus. Come in a right attitude of heart, however. Come in an attitude of humility. Come knowing that you are heirs to the kingdom of God. And come to what Spurgeon calls, "'tis the shrine of greatness." Come and see where the conqueror of death and hell was laid. Come and see what has been done for you. Now, people will travel great distances to see great monuments, of history, or places where famous people had lived or were born. Poets, musicians, actresses and actors, sports heroes, founders of countries and founders of faiths. They will travel great distances to see those places. They will travel a long way to see places where great evil has been done, places where the Holocaust took place, fields of great death, killing fields like Gettysburg, beaches of Normandy, where great sacrifices were made, and the tombs of the fallen lie in rows upon rows. People will travel far and wide to visit those. But today we visit the tomb of the greatest man who ever lived and still lives. Of all the places of honor that have been erected, none are so deserving, and nothing could stand that would do the proper respect, the proper homage, the proper worship to the one who came and saved the world from itself. The tomb we visit today is the tomb of a family member, of your best friend, your dearest relative, your brother, the one who intercedes for you at this very moment. It is his tomb that we visit. But as we go, we're going to take a slight detour. And we're going to go by way of Golgotha, by way of the place of the skull, which leads to, eventually, the tomb that we visit today. This is the place where Jesus hung on a cross for 6 hours, and he suffered there and died there because you and I put him there. Right? This is the one we spoke of, our best friend, our most cherished relative, our brother. He is the one we speak of who shed his blood here for you, for me, suffered there because of us and for us. So have a look at the cross. Right? What you see there is just the vertical piece, the pole. He carried the other piece on his shoulders to the point where he could no more, and then a man named Simon helped him finish the journey from the city to the place of his death. This is the place where he was nailed to that crosspiece and then hoisted up on the pole you see before you, where he hung for hours in agony. But he did that in order that you and I didn't have to. See, we deserve to be in this place. This should be our place of death and suffering. But he took our sins upon himself so that we would not have to suffer here, shed our blood here. He took our death sentence upon himself. And so that verdict of death is now satisfied. And it's satisfied once and for all. But it's a sad place here at the foot of the cross. It's a gruesome place. It smells of death, and there are blood stains everywhere. Everywhere you look on the ground, everywhere you look in this area, you see evidence of death and destruction. But the blood stains that you see is blood shed here for you and I. This is why he came. And yes, it's a gruesome place. But it's a place that we have to come and look upon and understand in order to put in perspective then where we're going next. Because Jesus did die here. It was witnessed by many people who believed in who he was and many people who did not. But his mother witnessed his death. Some of his disciples witnessed his death. The women who ministered to he and his disciples witnessed his death. Joseph of Arimathea went to Pilate and asked for the body as it was the day of preparation before Passover. And Pilate was shocked that he was dead already, because many would linger on these instruments of torture for days before finally succumbing. But Pilate granted Joseph permission, and he, along with Nicodemus, took the body down, and those who witnessed his death followed along the path that we now take to the tomb. And they passed through this garden that we're walking through now. It's a nice place, actually. It's a place that's peaceful. It's a place that's far removed from the noise and the craziness of Jerusalem. And it's a place actually to come when we're tired, when we are worn out by the things of the world. This garden here, where the tomb is located just a short distance away, it's a place to come to rest and to find peace, where there are no politics and there are no boats running into bridges and the tumult of the noise of society. This is a place to come. It's a quiet place. And so we cover the short distance now, and we come to the tomb. And as we get close, I sense that some of you hesitate to get close to a tomb, because we've all been to tombs of sorts, cemeteries. I get it. They're not always my favorite place, although at times, too, when I go back to Pennsylvania and I have time and I go visit the grave of my father or my relatives, there is a certain peace there. Now, I don't go at night, because obviously it gets a little spooky, gets a little weird, but during the day there is a sense of, I don't know, finality is not the right word, although it certainly is that in some sense, at least from a worldly body perspective, but there is a sense of peace there. But this is not a place to fear. And as you gaze upon the tomb here, have a close look. This is not the tomb of a pauper. This is not a place where those lower in society are tossed in and forgotten about. It's a pretty pricey tomb that we look upon here. It's not a common grave. It's cut from marble. Notice how it's cut into the side of the hill here. And before we go in, which we are going to do here in a minute, ask yourself this question. How did Jesus rate such a costly place to lay his body? Because he wasn't rich. I mean, his most prized possession, right? His tunic that was woven in one piece, no seams, seems to be his most prized possession. It was even gambled over at the cross that we just left. The soldiers threw dice for it because they didn't want to tear it into pieces and separate it. It was of good quality. But that seems to be the most treasured possession he had. He had no house. He had no place to lay his head. How does he rate such a place of honor? Well, Jesus was not honored until he finished his work. He suffered horribly in his last hours. He was shamed. He was spat upon. He was humiliated. He was beaten within an inch of his life before he even carried the burden of his cross to where we just left. Isaiah says he was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised and we esteemed him not. But the moment on that cross, the moment he uttered the words, "It is finished," it's as if his Father said, "Okay, enough. It is indeed finished, and you will be dishonored no more. So sleep, my son. Rest here. Rest, for you have been victorious. You were not a victim. You were a victor. You have conquered death and sin. You have done all that I have asked you to do. So let these nobles take your body and preside over your funeral. Let them honor you. Let the respect that you were due in life now come to you in death." And so Jesus finished his work and slept now in a tomb suited for a king. For a king he is. And those that knew him, the Josephs and the Nicodemuses and his followers, knew him for who he truly was. But it's a borrowed tomb nonetheless. And as we said, Jesus had no house of his own. He slept in places provided for by others, or he slept out in the open, as he did so often. He borrowed boats in which to preach from. He borrowed donkeys on which to enter Jerusalem on. Not so long before what we witness now today. And true to his life, he is provided for in death. But it's borrowed for another reason. So let's go in. Let's enter in, and it's okay. There's nothing to fear here as we enter, because angels, in fact, bid us to enter the tomb here. They are the ones who rolled the stone away, not so that Jesus could leave, but so that we could today enter in and see for ourselves what lies here. And as we enter, notice that there is no smell of death here, as there was at the cross. There's no smell of death here because look around. The tomb is empty. Look at the grave clothes, folded up, set aside. Look at Look at the cloth that was on his head, folded up neatly, set aside separately. It's an empty tomb, for he is not here. He has risen. He's alive. The tomb we stand in now is borrowed because it was not a permanent place for Jesus. God raised him up as he said he would, because death has no dominion over him. And to note here that is so important is this empty tomb that we now stand in and gaze around and see that there is no death here. This is a sign of our acquittal. All the sins that he took upon himself, that put him on that cross, in that place of death, those have all been removed from our accounts. All of them. The debt is canceled entirely, once and for all, and it is not remembered. Those sins are atoned for and wiped from memory. The price of sin, which is death, has been satisfied. And it's been satisfied for all those who choose to accept this gift. Because notice that those of us here are all that believe in what has happened here. Those who have not accepted the gift have a hard time with this. They can't believe that this is empty. They can't believe that this man rose from the dead and now sits at the right hand of God. They will say, okay, his disciples stole his body. Well, would those grave robbers, would they bother to fold up the grave clothes as you see them here, neatly and set aside? Or the face covering laid separately? They would probably just be scattered on the floor of the tomb, but we don't see that. There was no rush here. There was no hurry here. It's as if Jesus rose leisurely, got up, folded things, set them aside, and then when he was ready, the angel rolled the stone away. So the angel rolled the stone away because Jesus has done it all. If Jesus had not done it all, he would still be here. He would still be dead if what we are talking about here and what we're seeing here today, if these things were not true. But they are true. As they were spoken of, as the plan of salvation was laid out before creation even began, as it was spoken of all through the Old Testament, as it was spoken of by Jesus himself, it's all true. The tomb we stand in, the empty tomb now we stand in, is proof of who he is and what's been done. And so, as Jesus is free, we are free. And that's why this place feels like no other. That is why it is different from any cemetery or any other tomb you will ever visit. There is peace here. And there is peace here because what happened here has allowed peace to be made with God and us. The gap in the relationship between God and us has been bridged by the man who laid here for 3 days and 3 nights, by the man who was crucified 3 days prior to being laid or to being risen here. Right? 3 days ago he died, was laid here, and now he's gone. He's alive. And for us, he sits at the right hand of the Father and intercedes for us in this present day. So we are free because Jesus is free. And so I leave you today, as Spurgeon left his congregation so many years ago. He says, come and view the place then with all hallowed meditation. View where the Lord lay. Spend this afternoon, my beloved brethren, in meditating upon it. And very often, go to Christ's grave, and both to weep and to rejoice. Ye timid ones, do not be afraid to approach, for 'tis no vain thing to remember that timidity buried Christ. Faith would not have given him a funeral at all. Faith would have kept him above ground and would never have let him be buried. For it would have said it would be useless to bury Christ if he were to rise. Fear buried him. Nicodemus, the night disciple, and Joseph of Arimathea, secretly for fear of the Jews, went and buried him. Therefore, ye timid ones, you may go too, ready to halt and poor fearing, and thou, Mrs. Despondency, and much afraid, go often there. Let it be your favorite haunt. There, build a tabernacle, and there abide. And often say to your heart, when you are in distress and sorrow, come and see the place where the Lord lay.